Hi again. All right. Oh, we have lots of people in the house. Hi, my mom is watching. Hi, Mom. Thanks for tuning in. I know it's late in China. Great to see you. And Japar, hi from Tehran. Thanks for tuning in. Great to have you here. Yes, I understand if you don't make it all the way through, those watching in China, Australia, and other such. I know it's late, but thanks for stopping by. There should be a Facebook session, Shapar. It's just we needed to work out some technical issues, so hopefully we're back. Diana Garrity, thanks for coming back. Diana Pombo, there's two Dianas who follow me on every tour, so thanks so much for coming, guys. Great to have you. From Mexico and from California. Hola and hello. All right, hopefully we've got the issues sorted out. So if you guys are still here, I greatly apologize for technical issues. They do tend to happen on virtual tours sometimes. That is the downside. Michaela D, I remember you. Hi from Prague. Thanks for coming. All good on Facebook. Fantastic. Hi from Ontario. Shannon McIver. I think I've seen you before as well. Have you seen one of my previous tours? Nikki Oldroyd, I've definitely seen you before. Thanks for coming. You're a diehard. Great to have you. All right, the crowd is building, and I am very sorry that we had technical issues earlier. I think we've got them sorted out, and hopefully we'll just have a nice, smooth, easygoing tour from here on out. Diana from Mexico, Maraquin, thanks for coming. Nice to meet you. Hi there. We are live across all channels. Fantastic. That means we're in the green. We are good to go. We're 3 minutes out from start. And yeah, I think everything's I have a good feeling. I think everything's gonna go really well today. So let me know. I'm trying some new things today, actually. I'm gonna be having some background music for the tour. So I want feedback on how that goes. I'd like to ask everyone at some point if the music is too loud or too soft. Let me know, I can adjust it from here, no worries. All right, who we got? Nessa Silva. Good to see you. Hi, welcome back. Thanks for coming again. And Carolina Capello, or is it Capello? Spanish. Hi from Argentina. Great to have you. All right, Diana Pombo. Thanks. I'm glad you like the explanations. Thanks very much. Chris, question: is it it's a problem with copyright if the music is freely available on YouTube and freely downloadable? It's an homage to Dvorák and Smetana, the two composers who are buried in the cemetery here. Jeanette Wilkinson, hi from Vancouver. Nice to meet you. And Eddie Old Hanhoff, thanks for tuning in. Great to have you. All right, let's see how we're doing with the time. Just 2 minutes out. Yeah, Chris, let me know your thoughts on the music. If I'm allowed to play classic music on the stream, stuff that's freely out there. Hi from. Well, that's a good question, Chris. I don't know. Would I be allowed to play Mozart, for example? It was just free MP3s online. Hi from Prague, Lupita Ortiz. Thanks for tuning in. And Luis Leon Ruiz. Hi from Costa Rica. Great to have you. Thanks so very much. Diana, I'm glad you're a fan. Thanks very much. It's fun to talk to an interested audience. I always had a deep historic interest for Prague, and when people kind of have that same interest and can really get into deeper information, I love it. So please ask your questions. All right, we're having a debate about whether I can play classical music on the tour. I'd really like to. If I can't, then I won't. That's okay. I still got lots of photos, visuals, graphics, and such like that. Hi from Argentina, Sulensa, and from Cancun. Wow, you're far out, but awesome to have you. From New York City, we got a lot of Western Hemisphere on this tour right now. South America, North America. Jeanette Wilkinson, I would hope the classic composers are in public domain. I think they would. I mean, just given how long their music's been around, I don't think they would actually. I don't think they'd actually have copyright on it. But it's a very good question. So yeah, 6 hours ahead. That is late, Mom. Thanks for tuning in. But I'm glad you stopped by. It's good to hear from you. We're far apart. We don't get to chat too much. All right. Okay, Chris. To be on the safe side, I won't play the classical music, but I'd like to invite everyone to go grab a piece from Antonín Dvorák. One of my favorites from him is Slavonic Dance number 8. Check that out on YouTube. It's a fantastic piece, and that's going to add some great epic orchestrals to our walk. All right, I think, yeah, it's 6:01, guys. We are good to go. So, just going to give a countdown for Chris. 3, 2, 1. All right, and we are here to go, ready to go. So everyone, welcome to Vyšehrad Castle. It's an absolutely wonderful place out here. I'm going to be showing you guys some of the landmarks and history of Prague's lesser-known castle. Now, when you come to Prague, of course, the first thing you hear about is the Prague Castle, biggest castle in the world, seat of Czech kings, seat of Holy Roman emperors, and Vyšehrad is a place that actually doesn't get a lot of tourist attention. It's quite remote. It gets a lot of Czech traffic. A lot of people come out here to hang out in the parks, drink in the beer gardens, etc. But there's a wonderful amount of history out here, and I don't think it gets talked about enough, so I'm here to tell you as much as I possibly can. For those who might be joining for the first time, my name is John Paul Franke, an American-German Jew born in Thailand, raised in Europe for the most part. And even though I hold an American passport, I've never lived in America. I've been in Europe my entire life, basically since the age of 2. Except for 1 year in South Africa. I went there to do volunteer work. My parents did charity work all over the world. That was a huge part of why I moved around so much. And I moved to Prague about 11 years ago. I've been in Czech Republic a total of 20 years, but I've been guiding 7 years. And I absolutely love to talk about history, legends, myths, and such like that. And I also love to interact with the crowd. So everyone out there, thanks so much for tuning in. I'd love to hear your comments and questions on the way. If you have anything you'd like to say, write it into the chat. I'll read it. If I can answer it, I will. And yeah, we'll try to keep this as interactive as possible. But I just want to give you guys a little view of what we're looking at around Vyšehrad right now. Let me switch to front view. Hello, Anita Ruiz. Thanks very much. Yeah, Shannon McIver, it's true. Given the copyright issue, it might be safer not to play the classical music. But as I said, you guys are free to go to YouTube and play Dvořák's New World Symphony or Slavonic Dance number 8, number 9. Those are great pieces. I'm going to switch to rear camera now. All right, everyone, here we are in Vyšehrad. I just want to pan around a little bit and give you guys a bit of an idea of the lay of the land here while I talk about some of the history. You see, when you look at Vyšehrad, it doesn't really feel like an ominous fortress. It's the funny thing about Prague's castles, both of them. They don't really feel like castles once you're inside. Like the Prague Castle, very good question, Hale. I actually don't speak that many languages because I was homeschooled and raised in English environments. So I speak some German, I speak some Czech. I'm learning a bit of Spanish from my Panamanian wife, but English remains my mother tongue. All right, back to the topic. As I was saying, the Prague Castle has the feeling of being like a palatial complex and a royal town. And Vyšehrad, it does have the feeling of a castle. And it has fortifications around the edges, but when you're inside, it really feels just like a picturesque little town with its cobblestone streets and its ancient buildings. Here, for example, we have one of the oldest buildings, not just in Prague, but in the country. It's a Romanesque basilica that dates back to the 11th century. Now, it's been rebuilt a few times. It actually was almost destroyed back in the 18th or 19th century, but that was a time when the Czechs really cared about preserving their national monuments. So luckily, a Czech count interceded for the church and managed to save it. And its current look today, it's a reconstruction from the 1800s, neo-Romanesque, but there's a lot of the original church still here. It's one of the original buildings of Vyšehrad. And to give you a bit of the background history of Vyšehrad Castle, it's hard to say exactly when this area was founded. A lot of it has to do with early Czech legends and people who only exist really in Czech folklore. They may have existed, they may not have. But their best guess historically is that the Vyšehrad Castle started in the 10th century. And it had a heyday back in the 11th century when the first ever king of Bohemia, Vratislav II, moved his residence to Vyšehrad. So he built a royal palace here. He started construction of the work of the Church of Peter and Paul. And back then it was like the place to be in Prague. And then it went through some rough times to follow. In the 1400s, during the Hussite wars, the castle was ransacked and largely torn down, and it was never really restored to its full glory. I'm going to give you an example of that here in my studio. Let's see, here we have Vyšehrad Castle today. Seen from a distance, you can see natural cliffs, fortifications at the top. It's pretty sparse. Most of the action is happening in front of the castle. Now, take a look. And take a look at this. This is what Vyšehrad used to look like. You can see it's a lot more busy. It has a lot more buildings. It has a lot more fortifications and guard towers, etc. Okay, wait, let me see. We have some updates on the music. Let me see here. Confirmed. Okay, Chris, so where does that leave us with the music? These recordings are pretty old, so you think I can use them? They're 19th century pieces, so is that all good? Now, Shannon, actually, yes, it does kind of look Game of Thrones-esque, if you want to put it that way. The gate that I'm looking at right now is called the Leopold Gate. You see, after the 30-Year War, when the Vyšehrad Castle was damaged again, its fortifications were rebuilt in Baroque, and this is an example of one of the Baroque buildings that appeared in that time period. Now, Vyšehrad Castle, like castles tend to, it lost a lot of its military and strategic importance in the 19th century. As warfare evolved, castles became obsolete. So it's not really an imposing fortress structure today. More, it's a beautiful Czech national monument, and it stands as a structure with Czech history, a symbol of Czech culture in many ways. And it was very important to the Czechs back in the 1800s to preserve their cultural monuments, and that's because they were dominated by Habsburg run Austria-Hungary. There was an absolutist government in place. It had suppressed the Czech Protestant movement. It was trying to reinstall Catholicism, and it also started to suppress Czech identity. Just zooming in here on this beautiful church as we walk. But the Czech identity went through a real crisis for a long time because all the major institutions spoke German. Czech books were burned in mass, and the Czech written word was disappearing. Czech was only spoken in certain circles, and everywhere in public, basically, German was the language. Czech heroes were being erased. The Czech identity was in danger of dying out, really. So along came the Czech National Revival. And the Czech National Revival made it their mission to preserve, protect, and revive Czech traditions, Czech language, Czech art, Czech literature, all things to do with Czech. And I'm going to be talking a lot about some of the characters and the key leaders of the Czech National Revival as this tour goes on. And here up ahead we can see the twin spires of the Church of Peter and Paul, a beautiful neo-Gothic church whose origins actually date back around to the same time as Vyšehrad Castle. We're going to be getting to that in a little bit. Here, though, on the side, we have a very scenic little park, which I want to show you guys. It's one of the charms of Vyšehrad, the greenery, the trees, the quaint buildings here, the village-like feel of it. Here we have a beautiful fountain on the side, adding a nice hum of water flowing to the area. Sometimes you'll see a lot of kids playing here. There's shade when it's sunny. There's flower patterns, which look great in the springtime. The specific songs I want to play are pieces from Dvorák. but the recording is hard to say. I see your point. Okay, sorry, I'm speaking with Chris behind the scenes again on the music. I can't say when it was recorded, so I won't take the risk. I don't know, so yeah, here's just a little flower bed on the side. Absolutely beautiful. All right, so we've agreed we're not going to play the music, but I hope some of you guys are listening to it behind the camera anyway. All right. Yeah, Hail Horseman, it's an absolutely fantastic place. It's sort of the charm of the Vyšehrad Castle in general. Just the beautiful scenery of it and the hidden myths and legends. And we're actually coming up on one of the legends right here. That's a fantastic idea, Chris. Please do that. Antonín Dvorák, Slavonic Dance, number 8. That's the piece I would love to share with people. All right. Diana, that's hard to say. I'm not sure how many people live here. I'm not sure of the population density of the various Prague districts. It's not the most population dense district, that's for sure. All right, here we have the Devil's Column. 3 pieces of stone leaning against each other, and these things have a pretty inexplicable origin. No one really knows for sure where they come from, although some people claim to. The Devil's Column, as it's called, is allegedly the result of a bet with the devil. Now, here we have the Church of Peter and Paul once again. And they say that hundreds of years ago, a priest of this church had fallen into gambling debt, and a demon named Zardan made a wager with him for his soul. He would give him money if he could finish celebrating Mass before the demon went to Rome, collected a pillar from the St. Peter's Church, and returned to Bohemia. The priest accepted the bet with his soul on the line, and they were off to the races. He began his Mass, the demon raced off to Rome, but the demon, being the dastardly demon that he is, he cheated. He didn't go to St. Peter's in Rome. He went to the nearer church of Santa Maria in Trastevere, I think, Trastevere, something like that, near Rome. A slightly closer church is the main point. And St. Peter, who saw the demon cheating, penalized him by throwing his demon butt into the Mediterranean Sea 3 times. So the demon returned to Prague just as Mass was ending. He lost the bet, and he threw the pillar into the roof of the St. Peter and Paul Church. It shattered into 3 pieces, and it's been here ever since. Now, in the 1800s, a provost of the church wrote, the story is true, and it is impossible to speak or believe otherwise. Well, you say that. My question is, though, which version? Because there are many different versions. Some have Zardan the demon as the gambler, some have the priest as the gambler, some have the demon Zardan working for St. Peter to build the church. There's many variations of the story, as legends tend to have. So if there's truth in any of them, I guess we'll never know. But I'm taking us to another park now. We're going to get to the front of the Church of Peter and Paul as we go. But here we're coming up on the Vyšehrad Gardens, another park right next to where we were. There's some fantastic sculpture in this garden. And these sculptures were done by one of the most iconic Czech sculptors of history. His name was Josef Václav Myslbek. This man was actually a member, or sorry, an icon of that Czech national revival movement I was talking about. Czech history has a very deep culture of sculpture, and there's so many great sculptures in the architecture and the bridges and just the roadsides of Prague, really. And this guy, Myslbek, he was doing sculptures of Czech folklore and legends back in the 1800s, and of some very important Czech characters, focusing on reviving Czech stories. Here's a beautiful one. Now, in 1881, Myslbek won a contest And the prize was that he would get to do 4 beautiful statues for the Palatsky Bridge. Now, sadly, the Palatsky Bridge was damaged in an accidental bombing. It was February 14th, 1945, American forces were trying to bomb Dresden and had bad radar or something. They went a little bit off course. They found Prague and saw a city with a river running through it, thought, oh, that must be Dresden, and they bombed Prague. There was a significant loss of life in that bombing, unfortunately. They apologized, they helped to pay for some of the damages, they built some buildings as apologies in Prague. But the statues, some of them were damaged but repaired and then moved to Vyšehrad afterwards. Now, the stories that they tell are probably not true. They came from documents called the Queen's Court and Green Mountain manuscripts, which were a discovery in the 1800s of like really old Czech literature written in an old Slavic style. But it turned out later on they were forgeries. But still, they're good stories. And they've kind of become a part of Czech folklore nowadays. This statue here, I'll show you the title. Slavoj and Zaboj in Czech. These men were warriors, bard warriors, minstrel warriors, during the wars with Charlemagne. Charlemagne led an incursion against Bohemia. These men stood against his officer Luděk and defeated him in battle in the year 805. Daniel Mucha, thank you very much. I'm glad you enjoyed the tours. I love having you here. Thanks. Absolutely, Janet. AirTech hadn't come a long way. I guess they didn't have satellite guidance and such, so it was all about navigation, and it seems to have had its flaws. Now, this one's a bit of a darker story here. I'm going to go to the bottom again. Stirad and Sharka. Stirad is the man in the picture, Sharka the woman. And this is a tale from those falsified documents I told you about, known as the Maiden's War. Now, there could be some truth to this story, but most historians say there's not. Maybe it goes back to like pagan folklore of ancient Bohemia. But allegedly, after the death of the mythical princess Libuše, a woman named Vlasta decided that women should continue to lead and established a matriarchal society, recruited women to her cause, and they established a castle and went to war with the men. Now, the men laughed at their opposition. Their leader, Přemysl, warned them not to underestimate their opponent, but still the men were lured into a trap. The women used their womanly wiles. The woman, Sharka, tied herself to a tree. I'll see if I can zoom in here. You can see the ropes around her hands. There's a piece of wood behind her, meant to be the tree. And Stirad is holding in his hands a flagon, a horn. Now, the legend says that Sharka played the victim and said that the women had captured her and tied her to the tree with a flagon of mead just outside of reach to taunt her. Stirad was taken in by her story, and he cut her down, and she thanked him by giving him and his men the mead from her jug. But it had a sleeping potion in it, so the men fell asleep, were ambushed by the women, they were slaughtered, and Stirad tortured to death. In the aftermath, the men started harassing women on the road, capturing, killing women in their travels, and they provoked the women into an all-out attack. The women were defeated, and the men were the ultimate winner of the Maiden's Wars. Now, again, that's probably not a true story. It's a dark tale. I don't know why you'd go, if you're going to falsify Czech folklore, at least make it nice, but I guess they were trying to make it more believable, perhaps. Exactly, Jeanette. At time of war, especially. Now, we're coming up on 2 more of these statues. Here we have Lumír and Píseň, or Lumír and Song. Now, in this statue, it depicts the legendary bard minstrel Lumír. And they say in the legend that he refused to sing a victory song for the winners of the Maiden's War. I mean, why would you? It's not a happy thing to defeat a bunch of women in battle. So instead, he sang a last song to Vyšehrad, where looms the spirit of Princess Libuše, and afterwards he broke his instrument and left Vyšehrad forever. Here we come on our last of the 4 statues. Princess Libuše. Now, I've mentioned her name twice. She's the taller one in the statue, and at the bottom is Farmer Přemysl. It's a very difficult word to say. I'm going to show you the spelling. Now, the second letter, the R with the V on top, is one of the hardest sounds ever to say. It's a combination of the sounds zh and r. You put them together, you get r. Good luck if you want to try that. But this is actually a very common and famous Czech legend, and it could be true. It goes way back to the origins of the Czechs. There's a legend that's kind of common in Czech, Polish, and Russian folklore that says there were 3 brothers, Czech, Lech, and Rus, who went on a hunting trip, became separated, and each founded their own tribes. Rus becoming the father of the Russians, Lech the father of the Polish people, and Czech, naturally, the father of the Czechs. And Czech, he settled on Mount Říp, found that Bohemia was a prosperous land with enough hunting and farmland for the Czechs to settle and be their permanent home. And so he settled down here with his people and was succeeded later by his son Krok. Now, Krok had 3 daughters, Kazi, Teta, and Libuše. I can hear you Spanish people giggling behind your phones at the second one. More about that later. Anyways, all of them had gifts. Kazi was a healer. Teta was a magician. Libuše was a prophetess, and she could see the future. She had visions. And any of them could have succeeded Krok to the throne, but he had them compete in a battle of wits, and Libuše came out as the wisest, and therefore the youngest, Libuše, became the leader of the Czechs afterwards. And some of the men of the tribe, despite being happy with their leadership, they wanted to have a strong iron fist of a man by her side. So they asked her to get married. And she wouldn't pick one of the men of the tribe. They say it's possible she had a farm boy, plowboy, or rather, a boy toy on the side, who she would rather marry, and so she made it into one of her visions and said, "Turn my horse loose at a junction, follow it for 3 days, you will find a farmer plowing a field with a broken shoe." Hi from B's A's, Patty Gringa, nice to meet you, thanks for coming. And the men did as she said, they followed their horse, they found the farmer plowing his field. Here he is, I mean, look at him, quite the hunk. He could be played by Chris Hemsworth in the movie, right? Good body, all the works. But yeah, she married Přemysl, and he is the founder of a dynasty that is known as the Přemysl dynasty. And the Přemysl dynasty actually steps out of legend and moves into history. These guys really did exist. As to whether the farmer Přemysl did, that remains legend. But fantastic story all the same. And we're going to move now to a view at the walls of Vyšehrad. You're welcome to watch. That's okay. All right. I found my first live follower. Here we go. Let's get up ahead.
Libuše is not a name, but a title. The title of the highest women priest.
Oh yeah. Yeah, all right. Here we go. All right, so on the side you can see the Vyšehrad Gallery. Vyšehrad Gallery was built out of the remnants of an old Vyšehrad watchtower. And it has regular exhibitions of contemporary fine art inside. All right, I see some people are getting into the musical side of things. That's absolutely fantastic. Nikki Oldroyd, Vyšehrad Castle is free to enter. There's no check at the gate, so you can just walk right in and enjoy the scenery. It's fantastic. No fee at all. Here we're coming up on a great panoramic view. As I step right up here, we've got this beautiful scene in front of us. I wish the sun was out, because then I could show you kind of what the sunset scene looks like here. But this is one of the top spots to get a sunset in Prague. The buildings up ahead, a lot of them are just kind of communist blocks. There's a few nice ones to see. But down below, you've got the Vltava River, you've got this beautiful skyline here. If the sun is out, it just casts a golden glow on things. It's absolutely fantastic. And as we come to this part of the fortification, here you can see some of the castle aspect of Vyšehrad. This is some of the walls of the citadel in Baroque style from the 1600s, the late 17th century. I'm just going to try to get up here with these people and show you something that's over the side here. Actually, I think I can see it better from here. There we are. All right, down below, I'm going to zoom in on what I'm looking at here. Now, that's the remnants of an old Vyšehrad tower that has become known as Libuše's bath. Now, according to the legend, this is where Libuše would meet her lovers before her marriage to farmer Přemysl. The woman has needs, of course, you know, princess in office. She would engage with discreet activities with the men in a bath that was filled with buckets of water and had a drainage leading to the Vltava River. And the legend says that when Libuše was done with the men and had her fun, she would pull the drain and flush the men to their deaths in the river. I guess she had a nasty side too. I'm going to zoom out here, and we're going to backtrack a little bit. Hang on, there we go. I got the zoom. Fantastic. Jeanette Wilkinson, you are absolutely right. You're talking about this castle or the Prague Castle? Which one are you talking about? Hail Horseman, glad you found that funny. I know, Kristen, that woman, good leader in many ways according to the legend, but wow, you wouldn't want to be one of her boy toys, would you? And yes, Jeanette, let me know which you were talking about. If you're talking about the Prague Castle or the Vyšehrad Castle, because both actually have beautiful windows. I could talk about both while we walk. The Prague Castle, it's a beautiful Gothic building, part Gothic, part Neo-Gothic. The windows inside are stained glass, but for one, that's actually painted glass in the Art Nouveau style. It was made by Alphonse Mucha, who we're going to talk about a little bit later, one of the most iconic Art Nouveau painters. The Church of Peter and Paul here, it actually has a lot of interior Art Nouveau decoration as well. And it has this beautiful stained glass and colors, and it's actually one of the most vibrant Gothic church interiors I've ever seen. That's because it's a marriage of Gothic and Art Nouveau. We're going to see that in a little bit. But here we're coming up on the church, and I'll talk a bit about it while we walk. The Church of Peter and Paul, like I said, the history of it really goes back to the early days of Vyšehrad. It was back when King Vratislav II moved his seat to the Prague Castle. He established a church here, a Romanesque three-nave basilica, and legend has it that he himself brought 12 baskets of stones for the foundations of the church to begin the building. Now, the church has actually been through just about every single one of the period styles of ancient Czech history. It was rebuilt as a Gothic church in the day of Emperor Charles IV. Charles IV was a great builder of the Gothic style in Prague. He was voted the greatest Czech to ever live, did massive expansion, and so the church might have looked something like this back in his day. But then in the 1500s, Renaissance adaptations were made to the church, and then in the 1700s, I believe, Baroque, the church was rebuilt in Baroque style. Let me show you that picture again. There you see in the middle of Vyšehrad, this church with two towers and a green dome. That's the Church of Peter and Paul. So that's an idea of what the church might have looked like in its Baroque era. But then the church returned to Neo-Gothic in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. There was a big reconstruction done. They added the twin spires. I'm going to zoom up here so you guys can get a view of the whole church. Look at that. You know, I'm glad that it returned to Gothic. I think Gothic is a great period piece for Prague. It kind of demonstrates the ancient history of the church. It's a beautiful style. It's definitely worthy of the Church of Peter and Paul. Great intricate Gothic decorations and doors. And since I can't actually get inside, let me give you an idea what this church looks like on the interior. Here we go. Like I said, it's incredibly vibrant. The inside is decorated with Art Nouveau murals and windows, and it's bright and it's colorful and it's vibrant. I think it's one of the most beautifully decorated interiors of a church in Prague. Let me exit that. All right, and we're moving now a little bit to the left. And Mom, if you're still watching, I think you will appreciate this. Pax vobis. If anyone has watched the movie Ivanhoe or read the book, maybe you can tell me what Pax vobis means. Or you can always cheat and Google it. I don't mind that. It's Latin, as a clue. Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of comments about the inside of the church. It's fantastic. It really is stark contrast, because the outside is kind of this classic, dark, ominous Gothic, and then the inside is this contrast of light and vibrance and color and contrast, which is absolutely beautiful. But here we're getting to Vyšehrad Cemetery. Vyšehrad Cemetery, this area actually has a long history of burial. There have been burial grounds here ever since the 1200s. But the current cemetery was established in the late 1800s. And it's a burial ground for the who's who of Czech history. It goes back to the National Revival period that I was telling you about. It's a place where they could inter their famous people, their icons, the people who had an impact, and actually a lot of the characters from the Czech National Revival are buried in the cemetery here today. And there's about 600 famous interments in the cemetery at the moment. So of course I'm not going to talk about 600 people, couldn't if I wanted to, but there's 8 people that I've selected who I think are going to make good stories and are relevant to outsiders. Here we have the grave of Milada Horakova. Now, Milada Horakova, hers is a story of turmoil and difficulty. She was a Czech politician and a member of the anti-fascist movement in the time of the Nazis. And I wonder if anyone's actually heard of her, because she's more famous domestically than she is internationally. But she was quite a character back in her day, and the press around her was quite buzzing. But in the time of the Nazi regime, she was captured and interrogated by Gestapo. Tig Neal, hello, welcome back, great to have you. And she spent time in the Terezín concentration camp. Terezín is a tour that I used to run, actually, a concentration camp in the north of Czech Republic, or what was Czechoslovakia back in those days, a horrible deportation camp with abysmal conditions. She spent time in various German prisons too, until she was liberated by advancing American troops. And then she returned to politics when she came back. But then she resigned from parliament after the communist coup of 1948. Before that, she'd been very active in helping to further women's role in society, and also for preserving Czech establishments and icons. But then the communists accused her of conspiring to overthrow the communist government. And of course, their flimsy evidence of that was stuff like, oh, she met with this person, she talked with that person, what did they say? I don't know, it doesn't matter. She was arrested, again interrogated by the Státní bezpečnost, the STB, the KGB of Czechoslovakia, basically. And then she was given a show trial. A show trial is a trial with a foregone conclusion. It's just done publicly as a warning and to send a message to people. And they sought the death penalty. She was interceded for by a lot of famous international personas, such as Eleanor Roosevelt. Albert Einstein wrote on her behalf. Winston Churchill tried to step in. Unfortunately, her sentence was carried out and she was hanged. And her ashes, after her cremation, were never recovered, so she's not actually buried here. This is a symbolic grave in her memory, but she definitely deserves to be placed in the Vyšehrad Cemetery. Given her impact and the way the Czechs think of her nowadays. There's a street, a very major street, running through Prague 6 and 7 called Milada Horakova in her honor. You'll see here as we walk that the tombstones, most of them are quite elaborate. This is not your average cemetery. There's a lot of sculpture going on, a lot of beautiful marble, a lot of beautiful floral decorations such as this. Now, as we walk, I'd just like to give you guys a teaser, maybe ask a question. Does anyone know who Bedřich Smetana is? Have you ever heard that name? And if you have, I am betting you're a musician of some kind. Thanks very much, Teague. I really appreciate that comment. I'm glad that you appreciate the style. I love touring, and of course, virtual touring is a lot more difficult than live touring. So I'd really love to meet all you guys in person one day and show you what I can do face to face if ever things open up and ever you guys make it to Prague. That would be my dream, get back into the live touring scene once again. All right, we're coming up on another one of our famous personas. Right here, you can start to see her face on the stone in the distance. This is Božena Němcová. Now, Božena Němcová, she's another great character of the Czech national revival. Her story is kind of another one of those great underrated artists, people who never really get to appreciate fame and wealth in their lifetime. Now, Božena Němcová, her origins are actually in dispute. People say that she might have been a daughter of a nobility. Some people say that's not true. But in any case, she was married off at the age of 17 to a marriage that she didn't really want and that ended up not being very happy. Her husband was a harsh man, a disciplinarian, and he wanted to keep her in her place in the household. But she was an artist and she loved to write. And she was actually a more successful writer than her husband, which made him resentful of Božena Němcová. But she was writing in Czech at that time that I talked about, when everything was done in German. And so she's a very important character in the revival of Czech literature. She wrote fairy tales and whimsical stories, and her most famous piece is called The Grandmother. And The Grandmother, it's sort of a nostalgia story, catered to adults, making people pine again for the joys of childhood. Depicts a very loving, caring, God-fearing grandmother character who tells stories to her children and educates them in the ways of the world. And Božena Němcová, actually nowadays, is commemorated on the Czech 500-crown bill. There she is, the only one of the people I'm going to talk about in the cemetery who made it onto Czech money. We're moving a little more. Hail Horseman, she really should have. Unfortunately, her husband and her, they had 4 kids. I mean, that's not unfortunate, that's great, good news in their life. But they didn't live a very happy marriage. They separated but never divorced. And Božena Němcová ultimately died in poverty and underappreciated in her time. But now she's a great Czech icon, as the story goes so many times. Here we come up on another great pillar, this monumental tomb I'm going to talk about in a moment. But here we have Bedřich Smetana. Now, this is a guy whose music I actually wanted to play. Of course, I don't know when the recording was made, so I'm not going to play it today. But for those who actually want to go and look up Ma Vlast, M-A space V-L-A-S-T, and the piece Moldova, I think, is one of his famous pieces. Bedřich Smetana is a famous Czech composer, internationally recognized, and he's considered the father of Czech music. Basically, he is to music what Božena Němcová was to Czech literature. This guy drew on the styles and rhythms of old Czech music to create classic music and operas and symphonies. Thank you very much, Michelle Sand. I really appreciate that. I love telling stories, so I'm really glad you're enjoying them. But the Bedřich Smetana, he was the music of the Czech Revolution, actually. In 1848, I believe was the year, there was an uprising against the Habsburgs in Austria-Hungary, not just in Bohemia, but all over their kingdom. And this guy wrote the music of that revolution. He even fought as a soldier in that revolution. The revolution was crushed. Sorry, I'm going to answer a question here. Which part of the city are you in? If you want the metro, the metro is actually called Vyšehrad Castle. It's on the red line. So it's pretty easy to get to. Prague is very well connected. As I was saying, even though the revolution was crushed, this guy avoided capture. and he was able to continue composing afterwards. But then he fell into ill health later in his life. He had an infection that led to deafness, and as his health broke, he resigned his post. He only composed small time afterwards, and he started to experience depression. And later in his life, he complained of hallucinations, cramps, insomnia, and he was committed to an asylum. Thanks, guys. No worries. He died shortly afterwards, and the prognosis of his death is kind of split. Some people say it was old age dementia. Other people say syphilis. Modern day doctors are tending to lean towards the syphilis diagnosis. But this guy was a huge influence on Czech music, and an inspiration to Antonín Dvorák, who we're going to talk about later as well. Thank you very much, Naili Kamsi. I really appreciate that. Shannon M., thanks for sharing the link to Smetana Moldau. That's fantastic. I want to focus on this tomb for a moment here. Now, this is the Slavin tomb, and this is a piece from the late 19th century that was overseen by the leader of the Czech National Revival, František Palacký, who's on the Czech 1,000 crown bill. So I guess he's not buried here, but he also made it onto Czech money. But here at the bottom, that verse in Czech, it says, "He who lives and believes in me will never die." And at the top of the tomb are the words translated, "Though dead, they still speak." And on top is a sarcophagus watched over by the spirit of the motherland. And this place buries 52 famous Czech personas. I'm going to talk about a few of them. Their coffins are kept down here below the stairs and in other various places of the tomb. I want to get up closer here. We'll get to our first one. Now, this name I actually mentioned before, Josef Václav Myslbek. He is the sculptor who created those 4 beautiful statues that we saw in the Vyšehrad Gardens earlier. I want to show you another one of his works, possibly his most famous. And if you've ever been to Prague, let me know if you've actually seen this statue. Here we are. That is Good King Wenceslas, a beautiful bronze statue that's larger than life. It's a good-sized pedestal. It replaced one from the 1600s, and I think it's one of the best works this guy ever did. If I can show you another picture of it, it gives you an idea of the lifelike realism of this statue. I mean, this guy did the veins in the horse's head and the wrinkles of his eyes. It's so realistic that I'd almost expect the horse to kick his head and give a whinny. Absolutely fantastic. This guy was as good a sculpture as they come. Thanks very much for sharing, Daniel Mucha. Thanks very much. If anyone else wants to share the stream and help get the word around, I forgot to ask earlier, but I'd really appreciate that. Help people learn more about Prague. We're coming around the side here. You can see more of the names written on the walls. The famous Czechs, the celebrities. And we're coming up on a couple of my favorites. Bohumil Kafka. Now, Bohumil Kafka, I don't know if he has any relation to Franz Kafka. I was trying to figure that out, but I couldn't find any solid sources linking them, so it's possible that they were unrelated. But this man was a student of Myslbek, the sculptor I just talked about earlier. And I think in some ways he actually surpassed him. The student became the master. Maybe that's not entirely true, but this guy, he produced the largest bronze equestrian statue in the world, and my personal favorite statue in the world. Here it is, sitting on top of Vítkov Hill. That statue is 9 meters tall, and with the base, it's 22 meters. The largest bronze equestrian statue in the world, the third largest equestrian statue in the world, and high up on Vítkov Hill, the character is Jan Žižka. Now, for those who haven't heard much of the Hussites were an early Protestant movement that actually came before Martin Luther, so they weren't called Protestants yet. But Martin Luther actually in 1519 said during a debate, "Ich bin ein Hussit," I am a Hussite. So it goes to show the influence that they had on him and his teachings later on. Yeah, that's a very good question. Let me see if I can decipher that. 1814 to 1924, 42... That's actually a very good question. I'm not sure how to decipher those. That's so funny. I never looked at the numbers that closely. They are a bit confusing, aren't they? I wonder why they chose to write them in that fashion. Let me show you the statue again from another angle. There you go. Jan Žižka, he looks like a real badass. It does justice to the character, because Jan Žižka was one of the greatest generals who ever lived. He was fighting against the Catholic Church because the church was trying to suppress the Hussite movement. Jan Žižka fought a war against incredible odds and never lost a battle in his life. 16 major engagements and a whole bunch of skirmishes and sieges to his name. He came out victorious, despite being blind in one eye and then blind completely later on. And here we have one of my favorites. Eric Ballenbin, thanks for tuning in. Hello from Prague. Thanks for tuning in all the way from Hawaii. Jeanette Wilkinson, yeah, sorry, I don't know why the dates are written like that. I'm a bit confused by them myself. But Alphonse Mucha, this is the guy I want to talk about next. Of all the people I'm talking about today, this guy's my favorite. Alphonse Mucha is one of the most iconic Czech painters and artists in the 18 to 1900s. Now, Alphonse Mucha, his style was Art Nouveau. He's one of the biggest names of Art Nouveau painting. And he had different styles that he would do. He had his commercial style, which I will show you here. This is kind of how he painted for his patrons and for the people he worked for. You can see his art was actually somewhat influenced by Japanese art in the way he uses color and flowers. It almost looks like Japanese wood carvings in some ways. This is a beautiful piece of his. I do love his commercial style, but then he also had a style of his own that he used for pieces that just kind of came from his soul. And here's an idea of that. This is a piece from the Slav epic. The Slav epic, I actually got to see it physically once in an exhibition in the municipal house. These are huge paintings. They're a few meters high and wide, and they depict pieces of Czech lore and Czech legend and Czech history. And again, it speaks to that desire to bring back Czech culture and to revive their art. And this guy actually got to see Czechoslovakia become a country in his day. Unfortunately, he was also a victim of the Gestapo. We have a very interesting answer here. The higher number is the day and the lower number is the month, according to Google. Okay, fantastic. But yeah, here you can see a piece of his, the 18th of his 20-piece Slav epic series. And it shows a youth organization making an oath of allegiance to the goddess Slavia, which was required to join their organization. And this organization was actually dedicated to the preservation of Czech culture and tradition and art as well. Now, let's take a stroll over this way. We're going to see two last people in the cemetery. Down here, the next person we're going to see had a big... fantastic, Eric Balabin. I'm glad you enjoyed SANDEMANs Tours Abroad. Thanks for tuning in for the virtual version. I hope I've done a good job so far. I hope I'm being informative. Yeah, as I was saying, the guy that I'm going to show you next, he had just one very important contribution to the Czech language. Here are these beautiful Italian arches for more of the famous characters, beautiful tombs carved in the side. Just look at that. That's a beautiful grave right there. But the one I want to focus on is on my left. Karel Čapek. Now this guy's, the story of his influence is rather short. He's a Czech writer and playwright. And he wrote a famous piece known as Rossum's Universal Robots. And it's a story about bioengineered organisms that mimic human beings. But actually we didn't have the word robot before that play. He invented it, used it to describe these bioengineered organisms, and he contributed the word robot to the English language. Fun piece of trivia as we move on to one of the more important tombs in the Vyšehrad Cemetery. All right. So has anyone out there actually been to Vyšehrad before? I'd love to hear if you've actually come and seen the sites physically, if you've been to Prague as well. Let me know. Let me know what your impressions were if you've actually been out here and seen the place. I'd love to hear from you guys. All right, now this is where you guys should play the New World Symphony, if you have the link to that on YouTube. Then load it up now, turn the volume to a nice medium, and you'll hear the music of the man that we're about to talk about. Oh, Alexa, you were here. The graveyards were closed. That's a shame. So when you come back, come by and take a look at the cemetery. Visit the graves that I've just marked for you on this tour, because it's great to see where these people are laid to rest. The impact that they had in life, and the way their message continues on after their death. Fantastic. Here we have Antonín Dvorák. Dvorák, this guy was truly great. He was inspired a lot by the work of Bedřich Smetana. Bedřich Smetana is the father of Czech music, but this guy really outshone him in the international scene. He is the first Czech composer to really gain international recognition the way this man did. He also derived from the classic Czech rhythms and tunes, specifically of Moravian folk music, which he incorporated into his operas and his symphonies. And this man actually for a long time taught at he was the director of the New York Conservatory of Music. And he spent time in a town called, what was it, Spillville, Iowa. And one of the reasons he went there is because in New York he was homesick and he wanted to be around his own people. And Spillville, Iowa was dominated by Czech immigrants back in those days. And in 1893, his salary took a hit because there was an economic crisis back in those days. And he was feeling homesick and he was gaining recognition in Europe, so he returned to Prague. And he was the conductor of the Philharmonic there. He directed the Prague, sorry, what's the word I'm looking for here? Conservatory, again, of music. And finally, he died in his homeland. This guy, you should play the piece New World Symphony. It's one of his greatest pieces, and, interesting bit of trivia, it's the first music that was ever played on the moon. Because Armstrong, during his moonwalk, he was playing a piece of music in his helmet. And what better piece to be the first music on the moon than a piece about a new world, the New World Symphony. So unless you are into the Majesty 12 conspiracy theory that says they didn't walk on the moon, then this man's music was the first one to be taken interplanetary. Let me see, I have some comments to catch up on here. Into Prague. Oh, so you actually took a SANDEMANs walking tour in Prague. Fantastic. I hope I'm filling in a few of the gaps for you. All right. Yeah, those of you who are planning to come back to Prague, you really do need to come. Alexa BP, I'm sorry you missed the clock. The clock is fantastic. It's another one of those attractions that gets a little bit of hate because everyone comes to see it. But there's a reason for that, you know? So I wouldn't go to Paris and miss the Eiffel Tower. Sure, it's crowded. It's a little extra touristy nowadays, but it's still something that's worth seeing. The clock, it's much better than the Eiffel Tower, I would say. It's thought of as somewhat underwhelming by certain people, but when you think of how old it is, it's a clock from the 1400s. That's fantastic. You can't miss that. As we're walking towards the end, we're just passing by the Provost's office. Provost is Director of Higher Education. The building is definitely reconstructed. You can still see kind of its Gothic origins with the chapel sticking out the side here. That's just a nice little side attraction here. Beautiful area. I really love Vyšehrad. Hagit, I hope I didn't upset you in any way. I know it's emotional subject matter and the music as well, but yeah, these are stories that are absolutely worth telling. You got the whole symphony playing. Fantastic. Yeah, if you guys have the time, give it a listen. It's beautiful. All right, now we're starting to come to the end of things here, but there's a couple things still to talk about. So I just want to give you guys a heads up that if you have any comments, questions that you haven't gotten in yet, now's the time. Give them to me before we sign off. Now this is a statue of good King Wenceslas, and actually it's the predecessor of the one that we saw earlier. I'll open it again for your review. Here we go. Now this is the one that stands in the square nowadays, but this is an earlier version from the late 17th century that was its predecessor, and it was moved here in the 19th century. It's smaller, it's basically life-sized. Give you some idea. The other one's bronze, this one looks to be sandstone, that's just my best guess, I'm not sure entirely what it's made of. But it is the legendary Czech character of good King Wenceslas, the Czech patron saint, and the character from the song Good King Wenceslas looked out on the feast of Stephen, when the snow lay round about, deep and crisp and even. Fantastic. Paddy Gringa, I'm really glad you feel that you're here. I wish you could be here. It's always better in person, but I'm glad I could share with you a little view of what this place is like. Here we're getting to one of the opposite walls. All right. Here we have another fantastic view. And from here we can actually see the Vyšehrad Castle's opposing sphere of influence, which was the Prague Castle. For most of history, the Prague Castle was the seat of Czech kings, but this castle did have its stint in the 11th century, as I said. See if I can back up here and give you a view of the castle. The castle is way in the distance, so it doesn't show up very well on the camera here. I'll try to zoom in and show you. And just a couple last words about the military importance of Vyšehrad back in those days. There's the Prague Castle. There it is. A little hazy on the horizon, but you guys get the idea. There we are. All right, I'll zoom back out. Now, basically, the military value of Vyšehrad was that it controlled the west bank of the river. The Prague Castle really controlled the eastern bank. And not only was it defensive and protective for the old town and new towns of Prague back in those days, but it could be turned against you as well. It happened back in the 1400s, in the early phases of the Hussite wars. The Hussites, when they were going to war with the Catholic Church, one of the first steps was to secure the fortresses and the castles to protect Prague from attack. But the Royalists, the Catholics, took the Prague Castle on the opposite bank, and the Hussites secured the Vyšehrad Castle. And as long as they controlled the Vyšehrad Castle, Prague was still safe from starvation, because the castles actually controlled the supply lines and the trade routes and the food routes of the country. Because if you could control the castle, you could control the roads. And if you had a road under your control, you had supplies going in and out, no problem at all. But then the Hussites made a grave mistake, and they actually gave up control of Vyšehrad during a truce, a negotiation with the Catholic Church. Jan Žižka, this guy, he knew that was a mistake. And he moved to secure the Vítkov Hill. A crusade arrived shortly afterwards with 80,000 men. Jan Žižka had control of about 12,000. But over this way, outside of our view, is a hill called Vítkov. And on Vítkov, he built some basic wooden fortifications. It was the last trade route that the Czechs had to allow food into the country. And if they lost Vítkov Hill, Prague might not be the same as it is today, actually. The Hussites would have been crushed, and their history would be gone forever. Jan Žižka had to fight the Battle of Vítkov Hill against incredible odds, but he won that battle, and that's a tour I'd love to get into more later. And afterwards, the crusade fell apart, and the Hussites recaptured Vyšehrad. Now, when they recaptured Vyšehrad, they tore the thing down so that it would never again be used to block food supplies into Prague. And that's when kind of the Vyšehrad lost its peak image. You know, the greatest look it ever had. It hasn't looked the same since then, even though it was rebuilt. It doesn't really look the same anymore, but still it's beautiful, picturesque area. It's definitely worth visiting. And when you guys come to Prague, I would love for you guys to stop by and do a tour with me. Anywhere you guys want, I'm flexible. We can discuss the areas, the topics, the subject matter, etc. But definitely come and see Vyšehrad, one of those great hidden gems of Prague that doesn't get as much attention as it should. Well, maybe it's good, you know, you don't want Vyšehrad becoming overly touristic. You don't want it to become the Prague Castle in terms of the crowds and the noise. You kind of want it to remain this beautiful, picturesque, scenic, quiet park where you can grab a beer in the beer gardens. And sorry for the flickering lights, the focus is adjusting to the waning daylight. So guys, we are losing daylight, and there's another tour to catch right after this. You should go and watch the tour in Edinburgh. Edinburgh's a place I've always wanted to see, so I might tune in myself. Diana, put this castle area on your list. You definitely should. Save this video and come and see what everything I've talked about today. And guys, I just want to say thanks to everyone who showed up today. And you guys know how this works, basically. If anyone's tuning in for the first time, if you don't know how it works, I'll explain it now. You know, I do these for free, of course, but I have a few mouths to feed at home. And if you guys think that I've done a good job, if I managed to inform you and inspire you and give you something to look for in Prague, and if I managed to give you good information that was interesting and relevant to what you wanted to see, and then there's a PayPal link in the description, and you guys can leave a little token of your thanks, and it helps me to keep doing these. It helps to make it worth my time. Not that I don't love doing it, I absolutely do, but I do hope to put some bread on the table for my wife and daughter, so thanks to everyone who can leave a little token of appreciation. I really, really appreciate that. And yeah, I'll be here a little while longer just to take questions. We're kind of signing off now. It is the end of things, but if you have any last comments, please let me know. And yeah, definitely look up more about Antonín Dvorák, Bedřich Smetana, Alfons Mucha, those characters I talked about, because they have so much to offer in the way of art and music. It's absolutely incredible. Diana Garrity, thank you so much. You've come to every one of my tours, and I really appreciate that you like the subject matter enough to keep stopping by. Michelle D, I think you've also been on my tours before, so thanks so much for that. Really appreciate the support, guys. I love the audience interaction. Thanks, Shannon McIver. It's been great to have you. Thank you, Nikki Oldroyd, another one of my regulars. Fantastic, fantastic to see everyone here. I really hope to see you in Prague one day. And as SANDEMAN is commenting, if you don't have PayPal, you can also donate to the link that is in the comments just there, neweuropetours.eu/donate. Nessia Silva, thanks so much. I appreciate it. I'm glad you think I did a good job. Diana Pombo, thank you. I really appreciate you coming. Thanks for being my audience. Thanks for being my crowd, guys. It's been wonderful having you here today. I'm going to switch to the front so I can say goodbye face to face, in person. It's been wonderful out here, guys. Thanks again. I'm overwhelmed by how beautiful Vyšehrad is every time I come by. It's picturesque, it's scenic, and it's fantastic. So guys, go watch my old videos if you haven't seen them, and comment on them. I'd love to see what you think. I'll try to get to you and answer those comments. Good night, Mom. Thanks for coming. I'm glad you made it all the way through. Teague, thanks so much. It's wonderful to hear that feedback. I love what I do, and it's always nice to hear that it's appreciated, and the depth that you appreciate it. I'm touched. Thanks so much. I really appreciate that. And yeah, if you haven't seen my old videos, check them out, give them a few more views, and share these. If people didn't make it to the live stream, let them participate anyway. Let them see what Prague has to offer, and the stories, the legends, the characters. It's always great. So thanks to everyone who does that. I really appreciate it. That's another way you can support this work and this channel, as we're pioneering virtual tourism. It is truly fantastic, Tigneal. If you've never been, you really have to come. Hope to see you here one day. All right, everybody. I am going to sign off now, but thanks once again. I'm going to give a 10-second count, and this stream is over. So this is my final goodbye. Ciao, everyone. Thanks again. Thank you, Michelle Sand. Very much appreciated, too. All the best. See you next time, Dan Gurgity. Hope it's soon. We shall indeed. Ciao. All the best. Ciao, everyone.